Hey, what's up, guys? So today we're going to be talking about experiential learning. So definitely, when you first encounter Othello, you might actually, most likely you probably saw it online, or maybe even, first seeing this game through my Othello Academy YouTube channel, perhaps. Yeah. So basically, the point here today is that most of these activities related to Othello are most likely going to be uh, held online or maybe on your mobile app, whether you're playing on an app or you're playing at a playing website on your laptop, doesn't matter because most of the time, I think most countries right now do not have a huge number of face-to-face tournaments. So definitely, most people gain their access through online playing, and that's not really surprising because that's exactly what the trend is right now. But at the same time, I'd like to emphasize that experiential learning is really important if you plan to actually excel on the biggest stage in Othello, specifically the World Othello Championship. So I would, you know, straight off the bat, I would say that playing online versus playing on a board is extremely different. The experience is entirely different, and if you really wanted to excel, you have to go attend face to face on the board tournaments. So if you have an Othello board at home, great. You can practice on it, but most of the time you'll probably find opponents online readily available, and therefore you would be used to playing on a mobile app. Perhaps something that might be remotely close is that if you play it on a large, say, tablet, and you put it face down right in front of you on the table and play and kind of press or touch the squares based on what's available, but yet the experience is entirely different when you play on a board because you have to place the disc, you have to flip the discs, and of course, most players who are extremely, play extremely well online may tend to struggle on the board, and that includes, some World Othello champions that I've even seen. They're really good online. They know where to play each move, and yet they struggle when they place the disc on the board and they attempt to flip the disc based on the rules. So I would say that the reason why the Japanese are so strong is because traditionally they've played this game on the board almost all the time. Of course, there are many who practices online as well, but all of them definitely take a lot of pride in terms of how they flip the disc. So if you watch, if you've seen how the Japanese kids flip Othello disc, you would probably be amazed. I'll include a link down in the description below just to show you, perhaps an example of how the Japanese, even children, flip their disc. They flip it really well and really fast. So, yeah, you probably won't be able to get any advantage against them in terms of flipping the discs. So, the second point that I'd like to talk about today is playing in local tourneys or tournaments. So, the experience of playing on a board is already very different from playing online. And playing in a local tournament or in a tournament, in any given tournament, versus just playing leisurely on the board against maybe your friend or your sibling. So it's entirely different because you have to play a fixed number of rounds. For example, you might have to play at least 6 or 7 rounds of Swiss pairing in a given tournament, and or maybe in multiple days consecutively, just like the World Othello Championship. You would play 13 rounds, 7 on the first day, 6 on the second day. So it can be really taxing on both the mind and body at times when you're sitting there with long hours and just looking at the board and trying to figure out what's the best line for yourself. And at the same time, you still have to deal with a little bit of anxiety when your time is ticking and you're facing with an extremely challenging opponent, and you hope to win for sure because nobody should enter a board game or any given game hoping to lose. You should always try to win, regardless of who your opponent is. But definitely, with hope, of course, definitely it comes with a bit of a challenge as well when you're facing expectations. So yeah, if you have the opportunity and if you're blessed to be in a country with local tournaments, by all means go ahead and join a tournament. Even if you don't do well at first, you would improve over time for sure. So in Singapore, we're lucky enough to be kind of like a small country. we do have quite a number of tournaments usually, pre-COVID times at least, and right now. During COVID times, not that much, but yeah, let's see what happens post-COVID. And I think Japan also used to have a whole calendar of tournaments. So you could go into any other prefecture and perhaps go into a number of mini tournaments, and they do have some major tournaments along the year as well. So I think the European side also hosts quite a number of EGPs back in the past. Now I'm not too sure, maybe not that much. In fact, I think right now, over the past year in 2020, I think there were very few countries that were hosting face-to-face tournaments. I did see Taiwan, that is relatively COVID-free, would I think they hosted one tournament, and for Singapore, we hope we managed to host one in very small groups in multiple round qualifying, so that is still fine. So hopefully, every other country, who who wishes to have face to face tournaments can do so in um, like pretty soon, I hope. So the third point that I'd like to cover is the typical Tourney calendar. So let's talk about pre-COVID times. Pre-COVID times in an ideal world, usually March would be okay when you start off with the calendar month. January, February, maybe you would have a few mini Japan tournaments. In Singapore, you would have a Blitz tournament. I think in the US and also in Taiwan and Thailand, you might have a tournament maybe sometime in March. So March is typically quite a huge month. I think Thailand used to hold it on March and July for their Thailand Open. And then I think for EGP, the European Grand Prix is pretty much across the entire year. And for Meijin, the Japanese Meijin, which is the one of three of major tournaments in Japan, which is the only one that foreigners can attend, at least from a qualifying perspective, is the Meijin Sen. So that one is a major tournament, and you would see all of the former world champions, or at least most of them, appear for this tournament, um, usually held in March. So if you go there in early or mid March and you attend the tournament, if you have an extended holiday, you might be able to stay until April, until the cherry blossoms happen. So thereafter, in April, May, I think basically EGPs across. And for June, usually for Singapore, we have a school tournament. So we've once held a school tournament with up to 150 people. I think apart from Japan, I think Singapore hosts one of the biggest tournaments in terms of the number of participants that joins in. So I think for Europe side, it's more of a relatively smaller group, but a more specialized group of players playing. And yeah, basically, I think China also has a few tournaments in the mainland. So Hong Kong definitely one of the stronger Asian countries as well. They hold their tournament in July. I think that back then I attended in 2018, I believe, and yeah, I won third place back then. Unfortunate to lose in the semifinals against the top Hong Kong player. Uh, so I think besides that, if we move on to August, usually Singapore has its national tournament in August, and then in June, actually, sorry, back to June. Previously, Japan would hold their All Japan national tournament. That is not open to foreigners, but rather through qualifying from various prefectures and states, perhaps. So in August, we have Singapore Nationals typically, and then September, October is usually a relatively quiet month. I've heard of EGPs being held during that period as well, so that's an interesting one. Um, I think maybe in Italy or in France, Paris perhaps. And then I think the States also host a few tournaments, once in the spring, maybe once in autumn time. And then towards November and December, for December, Singapore usually hosts a Masters tournament. So typically the top eight players would play in a seven round robin. So that is meant to emulate like a tough environment such as the Major tournament, where every round is a difficult round and it really trains you both in your mind and your body in terms of your mental and your physical. So I think, having said that, it's really, really important if you want to improve as a player and playing OTB face-to-face tournaments, you have to get that experience in those OTB tournaments. So I think time management would be a huge issue. Writing transcripts at WOCs is almost mandatory and highly encouraged. So while you're playing and placing a move, and you're flipping the disc, at the same time, you also need to manage your time and you also need to write down the transcripts. So unless you have photographic memory and you can write the sequence on the transcript right after the game, you would probably have to spend some time to trace the moves after each and every one of them. So yeah, basically that would be the experiential learning that is highly critical in terms of how you can advance into a stronger player. Besides knowing all the general guidelines that I've been teaching so far, and besides knowing things like basic general guidelines on how to play the game, specializing in the openings, you also need to have the hands-on experience with the board. So if you don't have a board yet, you could consider buying the official tournament board. So if you attend the World Othello Championship in person for the first time, usually the host would give you a free official tournament board. If you're not attending one soon, you could go to maybe Rakuten, which does not ship internationally, but you could go through an agent company such as Bai or Zen Market and just pick up one of those official Othello tournament boards, and you can practice that online. It's almost like a 40 cm by 40 cm board, huge one, right in front of you, and you can practice flipping those discs. So yeah, so that's about it for today, and I hope you enjoyed this episode, and basically hope to see you at the next face-to-face tournament. So if you do see me at a future World Othello Championship, don't be shy. Just come on and say hi. I'll be happy to play a warm-up game with you anytime. Okay, so thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.